For those of you who've joined us, hello and welcome to episode 1 of LPM Tiger Team 2023 in partnership with NetDocuments. For those of you who aren't familiar with the concept, Tiger Team is a series of webcasts which hones in on a few key business challenges based on LPM's market research and brings together a set of business leaders and experts from a variety of professional backgrounds within the SME legal sector to try and solve them over the course of an hour. Each episode, we pick a different theme or a different problem statement. Today's problem statement is core tech, the good, the bad, and the ugly, where we'll be trying to figure out what forms the core tech of a firm and whether that is serving businesses' best needs, and if not, why not? Just a quick introduction before I introduce the panel. My name is Aftab Bose. I'm the editor for LPM. Our partner for this webcast is NetDocuments. We have Kaye, who's a senior solutions expert from NetDocuments. I just wanted to hand over to him for a minute or two to set the scene.
Brilliant, thank you, Aftab. So, good morning, everybody. I'm Kaye. I'm one of the senior solutions consultants at NetDocuments. For those that are unaware, NetDocuments are one of the leading providers of document and content management solutions that are very much cloud-based. Our target industry is obviously legal, hence one of the reasons I'm here, but we have many customers around the world that are utilizing our solutions every single day. And I just, again, would like to thank Aftab and the team for inviting us to be part of this event today. This genuinely is one of the greatest aspects, and it's very rare for us on the vendor side to get that insight into so many on the customer side, essentially get their insight, their feelings, their thoughts, and hopefully have the opportunity to share some value from what we believe on the vendor side as well. So thank you very much for that, Aftab.
Right, thanks very much, Mike. And it'll also be interesting to hear your perspective, because I mean, the idea for today is to actually solve problems. So it'll be good to have two sides of the same coin approaching the problem. Just wanted to, before I get into the real topic areas, just wanted to introduce our Tigers for today, our Tiger team. We have 3 Tigers. We have Julia Warrilow, who's the Finance and Operations Director of Thursfields, multi-service law firm with a headcount of over 200 people across 5 locations. Julia has over 25 years of experience working with law firms and out in the industry, supporting businesses with their finance strategy, and she sets the strategy and manages the operational drivers and leaders in our various elements of her role at Thursfields. We have Wayne Lord, who's the head of IT and business improvement at CFG Law, which is a serious injury law firm with 85 people across 7 locations. Wayne also has vast experience as a senior IT leader in various industries, and his role is to set the strategy and direction for CFG Law's technology transformation and operational process improvement. Last but not least, we have Alan Cousins, who's the practice director at Barris Smith, a full-service law firm with over 210 people spread across 2 locations. Alan has more than 25 years of experience in running a diverse range of businesses. At Barris Smith, he helps develop and implement its IT strategy plans and oversees the firm's outsourced managed IT services. So we have a range of roles here and a range of professional backgrounds, which is more important because it really gives us a diversity of perspectives when we're approaching these problems. I suppose before we really, so the topic for today is core tech and understanding whether that is best serving business needs. But I think before we really go into that, I think it's important to set the scene in what actually constitutes core tech, because there's so many law firms out there, so much variety. How is a law firm supposed to choose what forms its core, the core of its technology? You know, how do you choose from so much that's out there? There's so many sales pitches. You know, how do you choose whether to go with one provider or several different ones? How do you prove to people within the firm that you're investing in the right technologies and that it should form your core? So these are such big issues when actually taking the first step towards implementing technology. So I'll pose this massive question to the room, and hopefully you can share how you've gone about choosing what makes up your core and how you've gone about solving some of the problems that come within. Can I start with you, Alan?
Yeah, we have a one-stop shop practice management system, which we brought on board about 3 years ago. In fact, it was November 2019, and we can all remember those sort of dates very well, can't we? Because literally a few months later, we had to send everyone home to work with 24 hours notice. And at that point, if you didn't know then, you knew how crucial it was to have the right sort of IT infrastructure and technology to enable people to work virtually anywhere as if they're in the office. So it was just in time in that sense. And so that carries out a lot of functions for us. And we'll talk later about whether it's a great idea to put every egg in one basket and try to manage your tech that way, or to have best of breed bolt-ons. But that's where we are, and we're still taking it out the wrapper in a lot of senses. It does have a lot of functionality on the case management and process workflow side of things that we've been a bit slow out of the blocks to really make the most of. And that's an area of our business that we do need to focus on, because I think there are tremendous wins for the client and for the lawyers and the law firm to streamline processes and make them as efficient as possible and as automated as you can. And yeah, so that's kind of how our tech looks. Of course, wrapped around that now is a lot of investment and continuous assessment of security technology to help prevent a successful cybercrime attack. So a lot of our attention now is directed at managing risks, as well as having the right sort of technology to help us do our work, make our business efficient and work. And that's probably all I need to say at the moment, because I don't want to steal anyone else's thunder.
No problem. I just had a follow-up. So I mean, you did mention we will go later into whether best of breed or one-stop shop is the best, but just in terms of when you were actually choosing, you mentioned the needs that you were looking to cover with your tech. What can you give us an insight into what the conversation looked like when you were choosing?
Yeah, for most of my time managing the IT function, it was all about finding the best product to bolt together with other products. So it really traditionally has been best of breed. And I think as a sort of the size of law firm we are, I used to admire the technology that the top 100 firms were able to utilize, and wait patiently for that to be rebadged and repackaged in a way that was affordable and practical for smaller firms to use, which tends to be what happens with the most successful best tech. So what happened around 2017-18 was that we had a legacy account system, and that needed to be replaced. We had a quite a recently introduced document management system. We had a very good time recording system called Recoup. We had a really good financial dashboard system, and we didn't, and a CRM, which was quite fundamental. We never did get into case management in a big way, so that was always something on our strategic horizon to look at. But the decision was taken collectively that rather than replace the account system, and I was quite keen on Adherent at the time, for those that are familiar with the standard product, we decided as a business to go for a one-stop shop solution and change that. It made the whole project much more impactful on the business. If we just changed the account system, then I would imagine that the accounts team would have been very, very busy, but most of the users wouldn't have noticed a great deal of difference. So it became a huge project for the business, and took a lot of time and resource, but we got there in the end, and we're now reliant on that one product to do most things.
Mm-hmm. Right, I just wanted to come across the room to someone else's perspective, Julia. I mean, so there is a conversation. There's always a conversation. What should constitute core tech, and obviously Alan mentioned all the various things that a firm can need. You know, there's so much that you need. So how does the conversation look like for you? And I think one thing that you have touched on in the past is actually convincing people of the value. So I mean, can you give us an insight into how you go about choosing the core tech?
Yes, certainly. So I think we're in a very different position to Alan, because we've been with our one-stop shop for 10 years now, and so we've evolved that piece of tech, and we're almost at the other end now, understanding that probably doesn't do what we want, and therefore we need to look at best of breed. And the way we've gone about that is actually try to understand some of the pain points for the fee earners to make life as easy for them. Also look at it from a client perspective as well, because I think, you know, going back to Alan's point, when COVID hit and we all had to change the way we operated our businesses very quickly, the whole tech discussion and the desire to invest in tech really shot up the agenda. So it really helped us in terms of having that conversation with the equity partners and the shareholders in terms of what shareholder value should look like for the future, and the fact that that needs to be around investment in tech. So we've been really lucky from that point of view, in as much as our shareholders are 100% behind investing in tech now. In terms of the best of breed, and picking up on the point about what's the right solution, I mean, I think all of us probably spend an inordinate amount of time talking to different suppliers to try and understand, and this is probably something for you, Mike. What I like when I'm talking to vendors of tech products is that they actually listen to what our requirements are, rather than try to sell me their product. And quite a lot of meetings I had over that, over COVID, when we were looking at different tech, I did feel it was all about, well, this is my product and this is what it will do for you, regardless of the fact that that might not have been what we wanted. So I think there is more investment and more winning of hearts and minds when you go down the best of breed. But I think, especially for us, the size of firm we are and where we've been with our PMS at the moment in terms of a one-stop shop for 10 years, we've kind of exhausted that, and we will now be going out to look at best of breed.
And what is it? What is it that drives the conversation? For example, you did mention that, for example, COVID helped you convince people of shareholder value. But is there any tangible measurement that you can use for technology? Because I think that's something a lot of firms struggle with when you are trying to find out the value that your tech is bringing you, or the value that new tech might bring you. Do you have any set metrics that you use for measurement, or any kind of criteria that you use before choosing?
Well, it's very difficult to put a financial value on some of these things. So like I say, it's more of a blended approach. So we tend to look at what's happening in the market with other law firms, and also with what client expectations are. So just a very quick example, this isn't a massive investment, but when we looked at streamlining our onboarding, we now have, we have 3 options that clients can use, not just one, because we are a multi-service firm. So we have corporate and commercial clients, and we have Mrs. Jones down the road, and they have very different needs. So in terms of analysing your return on investment, it's not just, oh, there's a financial value, it's a much broader piece. But I do think in terms of valuing all these bits of tech, it's, for me anyway, and for Thursfields, it's really important that we have a clear idea of what that tech needs to deliver us. Otherwise, you are always caught in this discussion that somebody likes this and somebody likes that, and you just end up going down a bit of a rabbit hole with all of these products. So yeah, having a very clear understanding of what good looks like to you or to Thursfields.
Mm-hmm. I think we'll come to that later, is how to understand that, come to that picture of what good looks like for your firm, because that in itself is a pretty big challenge. Before that, I'd like to just come to Wayne. I mean, what is your take on this? I mean, there's so much out there. There's DMS, there's CRM, there's so many systems, and there's so many people, as Julia mentioned, pitching their systems to you. So how do you go about picking what will be the core of your business and making sure that it's right for you.
I think similar position to Julia, really, where we've had a case management system in place for a number of years now, and I think it's what's become quite clear for us is that we were paper light since 2019. We're very much a digital first approach, and we need a core case management system to be strong and have to the ability to build bespoke case management that works specifically for our business. And then out of that core, I suppose over a number of years, we've been able to sort of develop, requirements for some of the other the core systems that we need. Some of those are range from CRM systems to telephony to bundling and document management solutions, which are very specialist, client-facing system, account systems, MI portals, and then of course you've got your core collaboration tools like Teams and anything you use for communication. So there's lots and lots of specialist products there, which you're not going to get necessarily from a PMS system. That it becomes clear, I suppose, over a number of years that to draw those requirements out and look specifically at each of those areas to see what products exist out there. So we've been quite fortunate in a way that I've had a couple of years to sort of look at products, research, develop the requirements, and then get to a point where you're completely comfortable that the stakeholders or the shareholders or the board, the requirements are written down and quite well articulated, and then you can go out with a very clear plan as to what you're looking for, and start talking to vendors about what your requirements are, get some demos, ask some very specific questions, almost have a matrix of things you want to tick and see, to make sure that you've got the assurance that what you're buying is what is going to meet your requirements, really. So I suppose that probably wraps up really where we're at the moment. So we've been able to, I suppose, take our time and choose the right products at the right time.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things. I mean, maybe if I can come back to Alan for a second round on this, because that's one of the problems is as you said, you were lucky to have that time, those 2 years to research and to do your research and to go with specific questions and spend time with each vendor. Just wanted to check with Alan and Julia, maybe is there always that time? Do you always have that time to actually go out to each vendor, speak to them, try to make sure that what you're buying is what they're selling is what you actually need?
I think it's fundamental because there is a lot of what we used to call vaporware around, a lot of overselling. And I could name one or two products that will probably be familiar to most of us, particularly in the one-stop PMS category, where there was a huge amount of overselling and a lot of law firms went through a very difficult period while they actually finished off developing the product. Probably today it's okay. But be careful that if you're taking independent advice, which quite often you're tempted to do and is a good idea in most scenarios, if you don't feel you've got the capability to understand the full market, just be very careful that it is truly independent advice that you're getting. You don't want someone to look at your list of deliverables that you've carefully mapped out with your legal teams and that fits in with your departmental and firm-wide strategies, to then be persuaded by someone that you may not need all that after all, because it doesn't neatly fit with a couple of products that they'd like you to take on board. Don't let anyone tell you what your needs are. And if you can't find a product that substantially meets your needs, let's face it, you probably won't find one that does everything. But you need to be substantially covering everything you need. Look elsewhere. It's you really have to stay level-headed and not be tempted to think that's the solution. That's one of my problems out of the way, and grab it and go with it, because that can cause a lot of problems later on down the line. One of the ways that you can double check, if you like, a product is to do some deep dive analysis, which goes beyond the normal reference checking, if you like, where if it's a big product and it's very influential to your business, it's a big decision. Ask the reference companies that are using the product if you can go there and speak to people, have lunch. They normally don't mind telling you things if you pay for lunch. And if you talk to lawyers and secretaries and people at the coalface, you tend to get a pretty good picture, and try to get a sense of whether the reference conversation is a genuine one. Generally, I feel more comfortable when I'm talking to users of a product when they tell me there's a few problems with it, because there always are. If they're painting a wonderful picture of perfection, then that alarm bells go off in my head, because it's not about problems, it's about how those are dealt with and followed up and solved. That tells me everything I need to know.
Right.
So yeah, you need to don't take anything at face value, and don't be persuaded that your needs are not quite what they should be.
And just before I go to Mike for the other perspective on this, I just wanted to pose the same question to you, Julie. I mean, the time that it takes to implement all these strategies that Wayne has talked about and Alan has talked about, it's a time-intensive task, isn't it? So is there anything that you have, any strategies that you have to keep that as streamlined as possible?
Well, I think, again, we're probably a little bit different because it's generally me driving that tech conversation here. I don't have a lot of push in terms of it's got to be delivered ASAP. So I think I'm quite lucky in that I'm driving that conversation, and also that I am granted enough time to do full research. I completely agree with what Alan was saying, though, around making sure you do your research, and I'm fortunate that I've got quite a wide range of contacts, so FDs and other IT consultants that work in businesses similar size to us, larger, smaller, and all across the country, and I do find their insight, really helpful in terms of what products are like. You never want to listen to the vendor because, apologies, Mike, but they're always going to tell you it's the best thing. And if somebody's been there first and they've used it, I mean, I do think we're in a really good place at the moment, because legal tech has just grown so much recently, and so I think there are a lot of products out there that we can utilise, whereas before we were, you'd look to the market in terms of what you needed, and there wasn't really very many options out there. And so I think, again, you need to just be clear about what your wants are. Talk to many people. Again, I agree with Alan. People are quite willing to offer you impartial references or impartial advice about how products work for them, and don't be afraid to ask, because you will then get to understand what the weak points of the tech is, and it might be, you only want 80/20, don't you? As long as it covers 80%, it's just whether the 20% that you can live with that.
Yeah, on that subject, I don't want to get into too much detail, because you probably all do it yourselves out there. You're all experts and knowledgeable, but when I do a list of deliverables, which is one of the most careful processes, is to understand exactly what you want before you even start looking. What does your business need? What do your clients need? Is to have on the list of deliverables nice to haves, which you can sacrifice, but deal breakers where, if it doesn't do this, then it's not going to be any use to us.
Yeah, it's a good point. Mike, so you've heard quite a few perspectives on the conversation with a vendor. I suppose it's just interesting to hear from your perspective, where do you think the wires get crossed in conversations with vendors? Because I'm sure the vendors, the intention is to meet the needs of the firm, and firms feel like that might not always be happening. So it's just about, how does that conversation, how can it be improved?
Yes, certainly. And it's refreshing to hear everybody's on the same page so far, because believe it or not, as vendors, we just want to be open and honest with you. Honestly, we do. And the easiest way for us to do that is to have a fully identified understanding of the challenges and pain points that you are trying to address. I do genuinely believe that, or I hope the days have passed where vendors just show up and say, right, you need this, 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 and this, and are literally opening like a virtual code to show you everything they've got. It should be a case of, it's like in our personal lives, when you buy a car, you've done most of the due diligence before you even walk into a showroom. You know the make, the model, the colour, the engine size, and so forth that you're looking for. So you've made a lot of those decisions already. And I think the same applies here when buying any kind of tech, legal or otherwise, because if you have done that due diligence and understood the pain points, not just coming to us and saying our document management system isn't very good, that's of no use to anybody involved in this process. It's understanding the whys, what's causing those frustrations and challenges. And only the users are genuinely going to give you that insight. And so having the ability to get close to your user base when you're doing that due diligence is vitally important. And believe it or not, we also would love the opportunity to speak with some of the users themselves as part of the process when you're inviting us in to talk to us about whether or not we have a viable solution or service for you. So yes, I think the fundamentals is actually you as the law firms, you do all of that due diligence up front first, identify where the challenges and frustrations and the pain points of your users are. Then you already have an idea of the options out there in the market. And when you're inviting us as vendors in, be open and honest with the information you've gathered, because we genuinely want to position ourselves or not once we've understood what those requirements are, because we don't want to waste your time or any of our time trying to qualify ourselves when genuinely we know we cannot be a solution for you. So having that clarity and just openness, I think, throughout the process is something that helps both parties from the very beginning.
Right, so it all hinges on that. I mean, that due diligence and really knowing what a firm really knowing what it needs. I mean, I suppose, Wayne, if I could bring this to you, is how do you get that idea? Firstly, you know, I mean, how do you really know what your firm needs? Is it, as Mike says, does that conversation come from users? And how do you balance that with, is there a conflict between what users might need and what might be best from an investment and board level perspective? And how do you kind of balance those considerations?
I think there's it's coming back to the point about, you know, not rushing things really. Just there may already be some interim solutions that you could put in, some fairly low cost, you know, sort of effective solutions where you're learning from the process. And I think you know, we're quite fortunate in that, you know, I've been brought in to look at business improvement. So I'll have process people within my team from a legal background who can help develop a solution or develop ideas, working with fee earners and lawyers to understand what they're trying to achieve, and then putting that into something tangible from a systems perspective. So it's really important to get that collaboration with the legal teams to be able to articulate what it is that they're trying to do, and then obviously convert that into a tangible, you know, technical list of requirements. And then you've got something quite powerful to go to a supplier, you know, like Mike, and say, this is what we're looking for. It's easier said than done. You do need specialists within the team. You've got to have a really strong crossover between IT and technical people and legal or process people. And that doesn't always exist within the business. So if it doesn't, then I think you've got to try and create that virtual team. You know, is there a sponsor within the legal team? Is there someone who is a bit of a champion, loves using, you know, systems, is quite good technically, and potentially you could use them to leverage a bit of a relationship into the legal team. So without that, I think it's very hard to articulate the requirement really. So, you know, I'd certainly encourage that. I think just one other point, you know, whilst Mike's talking as well, we spoke about value before, return on investment, and I'm sure Mike would agree. We can put that back onto the suppliers as well. So if you don't have a very clear ROI or value measurement, I'm sure Mike has done this, you know, has been through the process 1,000 times with many different, you know, businesses. They'll have a model that they can help you with to look at where you're saving time, where you're saving, you know, cutting out cost or improving quality, wherever it might be. So use your suppliers to help you with that value and sort of shareholder, you know, sort of return on investment business case essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. If I may just add to that, Wayne, you're absolutely right, and that is part of the reason I guess you would be engaging with us. You want to understand how you can achieve that return on investment and how quickly, and we will have a better insight when we have done this with other customers as well as hopefully yourselves. And I know our sales guys, when they are pitching solutions They do focus a lot on ROI. They have ROI calculators that we've worked out based upon historical customer usage and how quickly they've seen return on investment. And so we can certainly help you understand when that return on investment will be recognised and how quickly we can achieve that by utilising the experience and our advocates. The best thing for a vendor is having happy customers that are happy to talk to other prospective customers that are happy with the product, open about the product and the solution that you're talking to them about, and tell you that the pros and cons that they've experienced in that process. And I think we get to that position by covering all of the topics that have been outlined in this section already together.
Mm-hmm. Return on investment is a tricky one. There are some products that you can get a very good fix on the return on investment after 3 months, 6 months, a year or two. Something like a sophisticated time recording system. You usually expect to see a big improvement in the amount of time being recorded when it's one of those systems that will tell the lawyer that there's a bit of time on Tuesday they haven't accounted for, and prompt them to put some time on the system. That ought to show through in an overall improvement in time recording. So, and you put a smart eye type dashboard in, which gives your lawyers all of the information they need on how much they're consuming time on a matter and whether they should be approaching the client early to say we're going to overspend and manage their expectations. So you should be able to see less challenges of invoices as a result, and a better awareness of matter profitability and that sort of thing. It becomes harder when you're bringing in technology to manage risks, because a big part of my job has been risk management. And I had to do a presentation once, and I wanted slides that show good risk management, and all I could find was images of bad risk management. Because basically, when you manage risk very well, nothing happens. So I was able to find a picture of a beaver that had chewed through a tree and the tree had fallen. That's bad risk management, but I just could not find good. So the problem with good risk management is nothing appears to happen, which is exactly what you want. So to take Mike's product, one of the challenges I faced when I first brought in a document management system was to be able to deal efficiently and take out the risk of lost documents, of poor access of 6 million documents, which has probably now climbed to much higher than that. So you bring in your system and you can access 6 million documents efficiently. They don't get lost. So how do you tell, there is a danger that people will say, we didn't need this system after all. Nothing ever happens with our document. Yeah. What was all the fuss about? Because the alternative is something you have to describe, that without it, you'd be in a real pickle and our business would be in a mess. So sometimes you've got to get technology that makes your business work better and is less risky, and just rely on your own professional opinion and your gut feeling that was the right thing to do, and and pat yourself on the back.
But yeah, no, I just wanted to. So I mean, we've covered quite a bit there in actually choosing your tech and measuring ROI, etc. Just moving on to the second phase, because obviously Julia touched on earlier, is that what you want is 80-20. You're never going to get 100%, but I mean, even 80-20 seems ambitious. I mean, from what we hear from the market, 80-20 is like the best case scenario, that a system you get does what it wants. Most firms are in a situation where they've invested in technology and it doesn't actually do everything they need now, and they need to either look to the market to find something else to bolt on, or make improvements within the system. I'm just going to do around the room to figure out how your firms are approaching that. Is the tech that you've already got, how are you making the most of it? Before that, I just wanted to remind everyone who's tuning in that please do use the Q&A to ask any questions. We have about 25 minutes left, so I'll pose the questions to the panel. We'll try and come around to as many as possible. It'd be really good to hear your thoughts on what we're talking about. But yeah, just coming back to this idea, I mean, you've gone through the sales process, you've taken recommendations, you've bought a system, and it doesn't do everything that you need it to. There are gaps in its abilities. I suppose coming to you, Alan, because you have got this one-stop shop solution in place, and there are gaps, as you mentioned. How do you cope with that?
Well, the problem you can have is that when you take something on board, and don't forget, you start looking at these bigger, more influential products probably a year or two before you even switch it on. So by the time you come to switch it on, the product may not be already quite what it was. The things that can influence a product have to be taken into account. So what tends to happen these days is that you'll have a company that's very bright, got good people managing it, they've got a roadmap for development, but then they get bought out. And often they can be bought out by a much larger global operator that already has another product in place that it does what yours does. And it's clear that what they want to do is buy market share, and after a while persuade you to move. And that can be very costly and disruptive. So you have to look at sustainability when you select a product. You know, sustainability in terms of, are the owners going to keep investing in it? Are they passionate? Are they going to hang on to it? Or do you get the feeling that they want to build it to a certain size and then exit and leave you to deal with that? The other thing that affects its sustainability is their roadmap for development. You could pick the best product that everyone's raving about that's been going, as Julia says, her product, they've had it for 10 years. But it may have reached the peak of its development and be about to go down the hill in decline. So don't always think you've got to pick the best kid on the block. You have to sort of delve a bit deeper into that, because you need a product that's going to be developed and sustainable for 5 years or more. And that's when you really start seeing a return on investment, when you can make a product work for your business for quite a long time. I call it sweating the assets. You don't have the disruption of constantly bringing in new stuff and changing things. And you have to be confident that there's a development team behind that product that are passionate about keeping it up to date, bringing in innovation, and keeping it the best kid on the block while you're depending on it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, you need to look at the future of the product as well as where it's come from.
Yeah, I think if I could pose that to you, Julia, I mean, sweating the assets, as Alan mentioned, making it last. What are some of the things you can do to make sure that happens?
Yeah, well, that's a really good point to pick up on, actually. I think culturally for us, where we are with our tech journey, all of our shareholders and stakeholders are advanced enough now to understand that you might want to sweat the asset to get the best financial return on it, but also that's not necessarily what's best for the business. So I'm old enough to remember when we first had laptops in, and the thought from the partners was, oh, well, everyone's got a laptop now, that's sorted, job done. And when you come 3 years later to say, oh, they all need updating, there wasn't that understanding of the sophistication in terms of the products developing and actually us outgrowing them, or technology moving on. So I think, for me, finance definitely want to look at sweating the asset, but also balancing that off with whatever you bring in, and even more so these days, is it is going to have an end of life at some point, whether that's because, like Alan says, the product itself has a roadmap and that then changes for whatever reason, or whether your journey as a business changes, and therefore, in terms of your tech strategy, it needs to be a live one that's moving all the time, assessing that risk. And if that product was right for you when you invested in it and you thought that would be a 5-year project, and suddenly after 3 years, for whatever reason, you're now having to go back and say, no, that 5-year project is a 3-year project. It's been able to demonstrate to the stakeholders and the shareholders why that's changed. There's very good reasons why that changes. But like I say, for us culturally, we're in quite a good position that everybody understands that tech is moving quickly and we need to keep up with it.
That sounds like it needs a lot of agility within the firm. I mean, what does that boil down to? Does that boil down to the board being agile in its thinking, down to the users being agile, and how do you make the users that agile in their thinking?
Well, it's two different groups, definitely, and you have to address the two different groups differently, because I think once you've got buy-in at board level, it's then our responsibility to deliver that tech throughout the business. And one of the ways I find best is I know people within my business who I make sure I can align myself to, because they are tech adopters, or they like new bits of kit, or they like to do things in different ways. So when we're talking about time in terms of the project plan, I like to make sure I've got enough time to get those people on board with it, so that they can trial it for me. They can give me the good wins and where it's not so good. So I've got my communication to those late adopters already sorted, and any of those no penguins, we can head them off at the start. But it is definitely a cultural thing in terms of winning people's hearts and minds. As much as to us it's tech, to them it's, well, what is it for me and what's the benefits? But if I can get a few people enthused about it and also raving about it, I then tell another team, I'll say, oh, you know, such and such a team, they're using bundle docs, they love it, have you tried it? And eventually they then start thinking, well, what's the tech that they're using over there, without actually thinking it's tech.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, sorry, Alan, if you...
No, I was agreeing with that, because I mean, there's a lot of useful small products that can really transform people's daily work, like bundle docs and PDF Pro, PDF, you know, manipulators and things. They don't sound much, but in the past, I've given, you know, a couple of secretaries in a legal team something like PDF Pro to play around with, and before you know it, your emails are lighting up saying, I want one. And the best tech sells itself. And the strange situation I found myself in on the other side is that I will see technology which I think will transform for the firm, transform it and be fantastic. But I find sometimes I'm in the position of being Mike's salesperson, and I'm having to sell it really hard to get everyone interested, because quite often the partners are very busy, and what they prefer sometimes is not to mess around with anything. Let's just keep it going as it is as long as possible.
Yeah.
And it's an unusual dynamic, I think, in a partnership, because what you need to get the partners doing is being part of your eyes and your intelligence system, and talk to people in other firms, go to conferences and things, and get excited about tech that they think will help their category of law. You know, it's not really right that we as IT experts have to tell them what will work well for them. And I think in a lot of other business models in the commercial world, it's the chief execs and the owners that see technology that will transfer manufacturing processes and things, and then they come back and say to their team, I want this, make it happen. I mean, we'd all love, you know, the senior partner to say to us, I've seen this amazing tech, I want you to get it and make it happen. But it tends to come up from the bottom, where we're trying to persuade the board that they need something, and then have to sell it to them. It's a strange dynamic sometimes.
Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to add to that, because I think this is another example of where, when you are buying into a solution, you're actually not just buying into a solution, you're buying in what should be a partnership with the vendor. And to your point there, Alan, about where you're doing the vendor's job of trying to sell that same solution yourself internally, we have some great examples of where the prospects have used us to help do that. I've got one of our particularly large customers in the UK as an example. When they selected our solution, they have multiple offices all around the country, and they utilised us. And I was actually involved in some of these, where they positioned us in those offices around the country on different dates, with groups of users, and they referred to them as awareness sessions. It was a 15-20 minute high level overview as what's coming and why. And then after the firm had explained what those aspects, they asked us to give that quick, punchy 15-minute demonstration of this is why, because this is going to help you do this, this, and this better using technology such as the solution that we was offering. So I think it's, again, it comes back to that. We're not just a supplier or a vendor, or hopefully we're not regarded as just a supplier or a vendor. We should be a partner, a trusted advisor, and utilize us in that capacity to help you be successful. Because if you're not successful with our solution, then we're not successful either. So we need to help drive whatever it takes to achieve that. And that is just, I think, a great example from what Alan has described, where the partnership with the vendor can be really valuable.
If I could just bring this to you, Wayne, because I mean, we've obviously talked about this whole one-stop shop, and the big problem with that is you're tied to the product roadmap, you're tied to many things, what sustainability of the product. But then there's the whole best of breed approach where you kind of go out to the market and shop as and when you need. But that obviously brings with it its own challenges. There's integration between the systems. There's the fact that people then have to use a bunch of different systems. So I'm just wondering what your approach has been, and how have you solved some of those challenges?
Yeah, well, I think one way to look at it, and we certainly have, as I talked before, we talked about having a really strong core case management system. And if you can develop that yourself, that fits your business, then you're onto a bit of a winner. It might not be the best of breed case management system out there, but you've got the ability to do something with it. So from one perspective, the grass isn't always greener. There's a lot of products out there that you can go and have a look at and seem shiny and seem new and seem fantastic. But sometimes it is just getting back to basics and getting the most out of what you've already got. And if you are stuck in that situation where you don't have the investment to maybe move forward with a new product, then it does help you focus the mind to try and just get more out of that. Part of that is perception. If the perception is low of the current IT systems, you've got a job to try and turn that around. But it is possible. And I think I heard Julia use the words, what's in it for me? And then I get a lot of that at the moment. What is in it for me? And we were developing systems looking at efficiency and over the last couple of years, and and then we completely stopped and changed our direction on our the way that we use wording in terms of the fee earners. We did look at the what's in it for me, and people would complain about how much admin they had to do. So we started looking at how we could create systems or processes that just were fewer clicks, took less time to do the same thing, and just targeted those 2 or 3 big ticket items. And in the space of 12 months, I've been able to turn the perception from quite negative and critical into something quite positive. And using that sort of energy, then we've developed that, and I've got people on board coming up with ideas. I've implemented something called digital first training sessions, only an hour a month, really, where we bring everybody in. Obviously we're hybrid working, so you don't get a lot of people in the office all the time, but we bring people into the office for an hour a month, which is not a great commitment, but it is essentially just going through some of the basics, the core processes within the system, and showing people, again, building the confidence in terms of using the system, allowing them to ask questions, allowing them to put some feedback in as to how we can improve the systems. And that's really, really worked well. So the perception for me has been the kind of, the sort of the turning point, really, for us. Get the lawyers on board, get a good idea, get some feedback from those teams as to what they're looking for, and get the most out of what your current systems are. But it gives me a very clear vision as to what we might need in the future. As Alan said, the roadmap is absolutely essential. So if you are going out and now looking for best of breed, you've got a great interim solution, which is fantastic, it's working for you, but you want to go out and get best of breed. Hopefully you'll have a better idea as to what you're looking for, and be able to choose that product correctly. But I think the learning point for me, particularly in the last 12 or 18 months, is just the perception's key. Change that, make it positive, and you're in a better place, basically, for choosing products in the future.
Yeah, I suppose, I mean, if I could, sorry, I'll come to you, Alan, in a second, but if I could bring this to you, Mike, because obviously there's a lot of firms that are trying to make the most of their existing solution. You know, they have invested in a solution. Partly this boils down to knowing everything that a system can do. And a lot of firms don't know the full functionality of what a system can do, and they might not have taken the time to explore what their existing system can do. So is that a challenge you have, is trying to communicate to firms that the solutions that they're looking for are already there?
Yes, we certainly have come across that, and we've come across situations where we've actually been involved in a tender process for something that we're already the incumbent for and can offer them with the current solution. So I've been in a situation like that myself. And yes, so we can and do come across that. And again, for me, that just comes back to the whole, we genuinely are not just here to sell you some software, take your money and then wipe our hands and then leave you to it. I've seen so much increase in the type of customer success roles that technology providers are now adopting and putting in place. Coming back to it's a partnership between the vendor and the customer and the firm, not just here's your product, let me know in 12 months if you want to renew it. It's a case of being part of that partnership, showing value, showing willingness to make you successful. And that comes in all different flavors. That's customer success, keeping on board with you and your users, understanding how it's being used, how it's being adopted. If there's gaps in knowledge or gaps in understanding, then we can take advantage of that and leverage some skill sets, some knowledge-based articles, some videos, some tutorials, some training, whatever it may be. We've got lots of ways we can help firms address that. Mm-hmm. And so it's just taking advantage of that partnership, as well as coming back to a point made earlier, as well as aligning our vision with yours. That can be from a roadmap perspective, understanding some other projects that you've got planned for the coming year or years ahead, because there are times where integrations are going to be required. There's going to be times where we are going to be impacted if we are the incumbent, based upon some of the other projects and decisions and technology that you may be looking to implement. So just take advantage of the partnership if it's in place, and let us help you with those projects, with those processes. And as a result of that can come down to the IT level, the board level, but ultimately the end user level as well, to help them take advantage of the solutions that they have available.
I was going to underscore that and what Wayne was saying. You have to put almost as much into post-implementation as getting the product working. And a lot of us have fallen foul. I'll put my hand up. You like to look to other things as soon as you've got something implemented, and tend to forget what you've got. And probably most firms aren't getting the most out of their technology, so they're not getting the return in the investment they could. So we've tried to resist the temptation to look for the next fun project or interesting thing to get into, and see the challenges as keeping on, looking at what you've just got, what you've implemented, and establish user groups to understand what the experience of the staff is, and maybe have a survey asking them to comment on how the product's going. I used to do floor walks and actually just talk to people about everything. How's the phone going? Your laptop? Is email working for you? And it's surprising how many people don't know how to use Word. And you'll find that there's a secretary at one end of the room doing amazing stuff, and then a couple of secretaries 20 feet away have no idea of how that would improve their job if they knew. So find ways of sharing that knowledge. I think you have to measure compliance as well, because I have had issues in the past where some, usually lawyers, very intelligent people, go to extraordinary lengths to try to avoid doing what you've asked them to do. As an example, it was necessary to drag and drop emails from Outlook into the document management system so that you could have an electronic matter file. And they would do all sorts of things to avoid having to do that drag and drop. because they thought we would have a paper version to rely on, and the whole point was to get rid of the paper at the time. So try to find a way of measuring compliance. Are people actually doing what you've asked them to do to make the system work as efficiently as possible?
And if I can just interrupt there, because we have about 4 minutes left, I just want to remind everyone, if you do have questions, please do post them, use this time to post them. But I'd also just like to go around the room. This is the slightly fun, and on a slightly fun note, I mean, the fundamental question is your core tech adding value to your business? And if not, why not? And I suppose the question I'm going to pose is, if I were to give you a magic wand, what is the one thing that you would change to make sure that that equation is in the positive? And let's go the other way around this time. Wayne, why don't you kick us off?
If I had a magic wand, I'd sort of go down the one-stop shop route. I'd love to work with a provider who had the same values as us, had a roadmap that worked and met all the needs that we have, and we'd have a fantastic fully integrated platform that would solve all our problems across the board. But of course, that won't happen for a few years. So we'll just keep plugging away, keep collaborating with our fee earners, and get the most out of our existing systems whilst watching the roadmaps and other products as we go.
Mm-hmm. Right, Julia, magic wand.
Magic wand, I'd like everybody to be excited by legal tech as I am. But again, that's not going to happen. So I support exactly what Wayne said in the interim. Keep working with people. I think building relationships, whether that's with vendors, with fee earners, with secretaries, with stakeholders, that's the most important thing really in terms of getting buy-in and getting return on investment.
Mm-hmm. Alan.
If I had a magic wand, I think the one-stop shop, by the way, is a good solution for quite small firms. So just to say that there are positives about it. It just doesn't work so well when you try and stretch that product into working for quite a large firm. But so it is horses for courses. And if I could wave a wand, I'd get a lot of development going on to make the one-stop shop product work, stay up to date, bring in machine learning and AI technology, and probably treble their development team so that they can develop all the component parts at the same rate, which is obviously something that the best of breed developers can do, because they've only got one major product. So the other thing I would mention is to have very good user groups that talk to other firms that are using that product. And if you're not happy about something, as Mike suggests, you've got a bit of leverage then as a group of users to raise that.
Right. And Mike, from your side of the coin, your side of the conversation, if you had a magic wand.
Aside from knowing this week's Euro Millions numbers, I guess it would be it's actually just coming back to a point I actually made earlier. It's almost be the fly on the wall in the room when you are doing your due diligence, because that way we know we're just open to all of the information about what you're trying to achieve and how you're trying to achieve it. Because there's been many a times where I've heard salespeople say that we've spent a lot of time invested in this with this prospect, trying to understand how we would be a good fit, and we wasn't, because it wasn't our type of solutions that they was ultimately looking for. So it's just coming back to that, being all prospects being completely open and honest with all vendors in the running that they're talking to, and just be almost a stakeholder in the process that you're carrying out to understand exactly what you need, because we have worked with lots of firms over the years doing the things that you are doing right now. So we may be able to, and I'm almost certain we would be able to provide some key advice and based upon experience and successful projects that can help you in that process as well. So just being involved as early as possible, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Right, some brilliant insights there. That's all we have time for today. Just a big thank you to everyone who listened in. This is the first episode of a multi-part series. We'll be picking a range of different problems and going into them in much greater detail. The next one is on automation in March. Stay tuned for a save the date on that as well. But for now, thank you very much. I really want to thank everyone on the panel for contributing. It's been really insightful and very engaging. I hope everyone has a lovely day, and see you all soon.